I'm not apologizing, I guess. I said, I've done some bad things. Like I've done things that are wrong. I wasn't perfect, but I literally convinced myself that I did them out of survival, like stealing from the grocery store. I'm not going to go back and apologize to the manager that I stole food for 3 months while my mom wasn't feeding me.
Hello, I'm Tessa Lynn Alburn. Welcome to the Say Yes to Your Soul podcast, where we empower women to connect with their souls and shine in their business. If you are ready to embrace your brilliance, create meaningful connections, and be compensated for your specific gifts, you're in the right place. Join us as we explore inspiring stories, practical insights, unique points of view, and soulful strategies, all to help you thrive. So let's dive on into this transformative journey together. Tune in and say yes to your soul. Hello there. Oh, I can tell our next guest, she's just super excited about being here, and because I can feel the excitement myself. We've had a couple of conversations. We had silly tech things in the way, but it actually gave us an opportunity to kind of get to know each other a little bit better, and I'm really grateful for that. Her name is Tammy Vincent, and she is a best-selling author, speaker, podcaster, and transformational life coach. With over 30 years of healing from a very tumultuous childhood with alcoholic parents, she empowers others through her podcast, Adult Child of Dysfunction. She's doing powerful work out there in the world. Her course, Trials to Triumph and Impactful Speaking, are other things that she is about. She's out there spreading the word to help adult kids and kids of dysfunctional families. She uses practical exercises and holistic methods to help people transform their lives, and she is dedicated to accessible and affordable healing. She inspires self-reflection, self-love, and empowerment. So I want to give her a super warm welcome to Say Yes to Your Soul.
Well, hello, Tessa. How are you? I'm so glad to be here.
I'm really glad to be here too, Tammy. And yeah, thanks for your patience with all the little doodads and that stuff. People don't always understand what all goes into these productions, right? Like this is an effort. It sounds like a conversation once we get it all up there, but it was like, okay, you've done years of preparation and speaking, and I've got my team and preparation and how to do all this. Anyway, this is just a little side note.
It took us a minute to get here, but we're here.
It did, and we are here. And so, your story is pretty powerful. There was a time when you were younger, and you knew things weren't right, Tammy. Like, it was like, wait a second. And you had some kind of a moment, right? You had an aha. Could you take us back to that time and share with us?
Probably, I had several ahas, but my biggest aha was probably when I was 26, getting ready to have my first child. And I don't know if you've ever read the book, Love You Forever.
No, I haven't.
Oh my gosh, you have to pick it up. It's a children's book. It's like 40 pages, but it will make you bawl. But anyway, so I'm sitting here reading this book, and it's this book about the mother's unconditional love for her son. And he's going through all the stages in life, and he's just being a typical kid, and the mother still loves him unconditionally and is singing him the song about I love you forever, I love you for always, forever and ever, my baby you'll be. And at the end, the tides are turned. It is now the son. The mother is old and frail and sick, and the son is rocking back and forth in this rocking chair, rocking the mom back and forth, and really just reciprocating that unconditional love. And I'm sitting there rocking, getting ready to have this baby, and total breakdown, because what I realized at that moment was I don't even know what that means. And it hit me like, wow, like I don't know how to raise a child. I don't know how to feel unconditional love. I don't know how to give it. I don't know how to receive it. There was really nothing. It was completely foreign to me. And I knew, growing up, I knew things obviously weren't right. But I went into having a baby thinking all I have to do is the opposite of what was done to me. But when I realized that I was missing such a novel concept, that's a big concept of loving something. I was like, I don't even know that. So I'm like, where do I even begin? So that was my aha moment. I mean, I had a complete and total mental breakdown. I went out the next day and I bought myself a puppy because I thought, what a test of the human spirit to see if I'm even capable of unconditional love. So I went out and got myself a little 8-week-old puppy, and I was like, okay, if I can't love this, then I got problems. And I did.
That was really clever of you, though, to think of, expressing your love as a test to make sure, with something so innocent and pure as a puppy.
Well, and that's a puppy. An 8-week-old puppy is very similar to a newborn baby. They're dependent on you for everything, in emotional, physical, everything. They're dependent on you. So I was like, okay, if I
Yes.
can do this with a puppy, I got a chance with a child. And, I'll never forget sitting there holding this like puppy. And I was like, my heart melted. I mean, literally, it was the first time in my life that my heart had ever melted. And I was like, I can do this. But then I remember going down to the library. I lived in North Carolina at the time. And I went down to the Wayne County Library because we didn't have the internet back then. That would have been much easier. But I went down and I sat in the stacks of books, and just hundreds of books, and just read and read and read and cried and read and cried. And I thought, okay, I got a lot of work to do, because when I started reading, I started realizing all of the other big concept I was missing about relationships and being a wife and being a mother and all, so I knew I had some work to do. But that was my pivotal, like, oh my God, do something now or the rest of your life is going to be completely wrong.
Well, I really appreciate how, I mean, it was sort of this accidental thing. You're reading this book, right? And then something came in around the love piece, because it wasn't like you didn't create a bunch of big catastrophes in your life, like debt or a lot of typical things that people might do when they've had a childhood like yours. And it touched you, it opened up your heart, and you were willing to go down that path. That takes a lot of courage, because you saw, well, I think this is key for a lot of people, so I want to highlight it. It's really important sometimes to see what in your mind, what is going to be the eventual consequence to one's life if you don't take another path, if you don't do this thing. And that was brilliant that you did that. 26 years old, way to go.
Well, thank you. And I mean, I'm so glad I did, because I coach people now that are still in that never really figured it out stage. And I didn't want to be in that not figuring it out stage. I wanted to be on the other side of that, where the stuff that I dealt with I knew there was a way to reach inside of me and find the stuff I dealt with and make it kind of like my superpower, like turn it around for good. There had to be. I had faith in that.
Where did you learn that concept of like having, if I turn this around, this might be my superpower? Where do you think that came from?
I laugh, and I always say, whenever I was really in big trouble when I was younger, and I can remember looking up and, going through that stage where I didn't believe in God, because I was like, my God doesn't do this to people. Like, that's just crazy. Why would you do this to me? And I remember saying, like, who's going to save me? And I remember as a kid, even like 9, 10 years old, because I went to church with my grandparents and everything. I remember hearing the voice like, Tammy, Tammy, Tammy. And I was like, man, really? You're going to mock me? Like, I'm seriously trying to get help here. So I went, and that happened several times throughout my life. And it wasn't until I was about 26. It all happened that year. I think becoming a mom, or the fear of becoming a mom, is what really made me start looking at things differently. But then all of a sudden one day I was like, God, say, like, who is going to help me raise this child? And he's like, Tammy, Tammy, Tammy. And it was like, all of a sudden it flipped, and it had a different meaning. And it was like, oh, maybe you're telling me what I got is inside. And I got to figure out that nobody is coming to save you. Nobody's going to be your superhero. Nobody, you can go to all the therapy in the world, but what you got is inside. That's what you got.
That is the coolest thing. Right.
Yeah.
Talk about a shift on an interpretation of something, right? It was like, you're mocking me. What's going on? Frustration's building. And then there it is, the real message.
Yep.
Oh, it's me. I can do this.
I can do this. Yep.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. So what was like one of the next big hurdles for you? You mentioned relationships, what were some of the others if you don't want to talk about that one or
No, that's
pick one?
okay. I mean, it was relationships were the biggest because I remember even during my first marriage. I mean, I remarried and happily remarried for 22 years now, but my first husband, I can remember my friend saying, it's really not normal that people talk to you that way. And it's not normal that you are a doormat, and it's okay to say no. It's okay to stand up for yourself. And that was the biggest thing because I had never done that. I had never, ever set a boundary with anybody, whether it was physical, sexual, emotional, time, space, anything. I was literally for the first 26 years was do, say, and feel and act what I thought people wanted me to do. And that was really, and that's, again, that's my big one, becoming that chronic people pleaser. And again, there's so many millions of people out there because you grow up knowing, and sometimes it's not always for, a lot of people become this perfect person and perfectionism becomes their thing because they want to please and they want to do that. In my case, it was for safety.
Absolutely. Yes.
So it goes both ways. Sometimes it's to please people, knowing that, you're not going to rock the boat. You're going to be the family mascot, the humor, everybody kind of takes these different roles. Sometimes it's for safety. I'm just going to shell out and, become a shell of a person because if I say something wrong, it could physically mean bad things.
Like literally a word in a sentence could make all the difference in that kind of a household with alcoholic parents.
Absolutely. And when you grow up, and my mother, God bless her soul, because now, I look back at it now and she was a very sick individual. And back then, I mean, she was a child psychiatrist. So it wasn't like, and I mean, she was one of the most intelligent people I've ever met in my entire life. Unfortunately, she used some of that knowledge to be the best master manipulator I've ever met in my life too. But, I look back at it now and, she was just very sick. So I totally just lost what I was saying. I was like, what did you ask me?
Yeah, no, I don't remember, but it's okay. So, I mean, I think I asked you something about like some of your other challenges, but I like where we're going here because, mama came up and then there's like part of the brain still like gets unsettled for a moment. And that's natural, especially when you've been through hardship, as a child and it wasn't safe. It was just really, really unsafe, your childhood. And not everybody has that, but people do have moments where it's unsafe, right? So I think everybody can relate to that kind of thing that happens where we freeze up or we fawn, right? We're people pleasing. It's known as fawning, to take care of ourselves and get through that time. But you brought up your mom, and earlier you were talking about like that biggest aha was all about unconditional love. So would you mind sharing like what were some of the boundaries you needed to set and then the journey into love for your mom?
I can honestly say I don't know. Okay, let's start here. I don't know if my mom passed before I ever got to get through a lot of that with her. So there was never any reconciliation. There was none of that.
Like not in a physical, you weren't able to say to her, way. Hey, Mom, I love you, even though, this all happened.
Exactly. But I was definitely able to let go and do the healing, to let go of the animosity and the rage. I mean, literally at 18, yes. I had rage. I mean, there's no better way to put it. But I was able to let go of all of that. I don't look back now. And now I have happy memories where up until about 40 years old, I couldn't remember a happy memory. I would lay there and go, I know I laughed as a child. I had to, because every child has fun. I can, my brother would say like, oh, remember when we did this? And I'm like, no, I don't remember that. And it took me until about 35, 40 years old to start remembering the happy moments. And, because, it'd be the worst household in the world. And you're still going to be a child at some point. You're going to laugh with your brother and sister. You're going to, hide away in a tent and play Michigan, whatever it is. You're going to have fun. I didn't have any memories like that at home. They were all at my grandparents' house That was the only happy memories I had.
Well, that makes a lot of sense in terms of how the brain works and the survival mechanism. Because if you had allowed yourself to have those happiness factors, those emotions, that could open you up to an attack, let's say. And so I think it's a key survival mechanism where the brain is always going to be focused on like the worst, right? To help us live through it.
Yes, absolutely. Your brain focuses on what it needs to focus on to keep you safe. And when I was having that happy moment, that got stored away. Like, I don't need that right now. I need to stay hyper vigilant. I need to be ready for the next shoe to drop. I had to be ready for the next thing. So, and I mean, I get it now, but it was kind of fun. Like, now I can look back and I remember sitting in the backyard and my mom playing guitar. And, I've always kind of said, I didn't have like, my mother was an amazing guitar player and she loved John Denver, like those things. So like when I went to get married for the second time, we ended up with a John Denver song. And I was like, wow, I can remember, like sitting there and actually laughing and listening to her play John Denver. It was interesting because I know for a fact, and a lot of people out there listening, I was a huge dissociator, huge, still am. Like if trauma comes anywhere around with involving my children, it's like I literally am watching it from outside my body. When my kids have got hurt, I took complete control. I was like Johnny on the spot, prepared, but I watched it from outside of my body.
That's amazing that you've been able to become aware of that when it's happening. I am curious to know, like, when you started awakening more and more into unconditional love, of course, there's going to be the journey to yourself for unconditional love, right? And it probably was important for you to set boundaries with mom, which is one of the reasons you didn't see her later on, right? What were some of those first boundaries that you can remember? And what was that like?
I think the first boundaries were actually with other people. They weren't with my parents. My mom died when I was 17, or 18. So right when I got out of high school.
So I didn't realize the timeline was so short there. So like 16, and then your mom is passing.
Honestly, 18 to 26, I was just a crazy person, honestly, just trying to figure it out, just going through all the stuff to just numb. I was in a downward spiral for a long time. Making bad choices, doing all of that stuff. And then after that, it was like, oh my gosh, now I have a child, or getting ready to. Now it's time to focus on something other than my own pleasures and just numbing. I need to actually figure this out.
Yeah.
Because I was aware. I mean, both my parents were alcoholics, and I was very close to my father right up until the time he died, but there was no denying he was an alcoholic. But we never had that discussion. But it was that puppy. It literally was that puppy. And I remember thinking, wow, I can love a puppy like this, a little dog. And I remember having the thought, I'm obviously going to be able to love this baby in my belly. And I bet you I could probably even love me. Like literally, I remember having that thought. And that was before I sat down. So it's like the wisdom, not the wisdom, because I don't want to sound arrogant, but the wisdom was in me. Like I knew. I just didn't know the tools. I didn't know how to pull it out. But something in me always went back to, nobody's saving you. Like, you got to do this.
You have to do this on your own. And so you kept going back within. What was a way that you worked with yourself, going inside and listening and doing some of that healing work?
I remember one time somebody, and I don't know who I listened to, but I remember hearing a quote on the radio one time. It was like during Casey Kasem's top 10 or whatever it was, countdown. I don't know. You remember that? That was years ago. But I remember they were talking about this radio thing, and I remember them saying a quote one time where it basically was saying, if you always do what you've always done, you're going to always get, kind of like that, kind of quote. And he made a comment about, like, guys, if you're out there struggling, it's time to change. It's time to, to do something about it. And then the next song, like, it was a depressing song. And I'm like, why would they play like these two together? And then I'm like, oh, maybe they're trying to tell us, like, you can get out of this. You can use your own thinking and your own judgment and it was like literally just a radio I heard, like a clip on the radio I heard.
That's incredible. The power of sound, the power of transmission, the power of one voice in a moment. Yeah.
And, I used to sit when my mom was a child psychiatrist, like I said, and she had hundreds of psychology books. And that was my passion, like how the brain works, how this works, and, addiction and alcoholism. Like I read all of that. So it's like scientifically, I knew it all. It was just having to try to turn the emotional aspect of it, which you didn't read a lot about back then, and take that part of it and mix it in, and I still talk about it today. Like, I'm like, guys, when you grow up and you're abused and neglected, it physically changes your brain. And that took some of the pressure off me as far as it's not my fault. Like now, and I can remember my father even, like he told me when I was 13, he said, your mom and I are doing irreparable damage to you, and I don't know how to help you. And that was the only one and only time we ever mentioned until I was in my 40s, his drinking. That was the only comment that was ever made, was we know we're damaging you, but we don't know how to help, or I don't know how to help you. My dad wanted to. And then he sent me to an Alateen meeting, and the Alateen meeting was about empathy. So for those of you who are listening,
you're a strong proponent for
right? Now.
Yes. But then it was like, what?
Not when I was 13. That was not the right meeting to send me to, because it put me off for 20 years for going to Al-Anon and Alateen and everything else, because I'm like, who are they to tell me to get in this person's head and feel for them? Like, when I'm watching, my mom burned cigarettes on my father. I'm like, no, I don't have any empathy, because I didn't understand. And that's what I tell you now. Like, that's why I'm out here doing what I'm doing, because I want people to understand, give that if you have an alcoholic parent or you have an alcoholic child, berating them and judging them. And it's not the way, because they're already doing it to themselves. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I think I'll drink myself to death. I think, nobody. So that, that empathy and that self-compassion part of it, and the forgiveness, like when we talk about forgiveness, 9 times out of 10, my head goes right to forgiving me, forgiving myself way before anybody else.
Well, I think that's a key to forgiveness, because how can we possibly forgive others really if we haven't forgiven ourselves? I think that's a recipe for a downward spiral fast. So it's like love. Like we can't truly love others unless we actually have some love to give. So that forgiveness, what kinds of feelings did you start to experience when you began your forgiveness work?
When I first started, I remember it was like going through the 12-step programs, and you get to that, make amends. And it was like, make amends with all these people. And I don't know, maybe I was just stubborn. Maybe I wasn't an empath. Maybe, I don't know what it was, but I was like, no, I'm not apologizing, I guess. I said, I've done some bad things. Like I've done things that are wrong. I wasn't perfect, but I literally convinced myself that I did them out of survival, like stealing from the grocery store. I'm not going to go back and apologize to the manager that I stole food for 3 months while my mom wasn't feeding me. Like, you know what I mean? So I alleviated myself of all that guilt of those things, anything I did in that time. Then I started really trying to look at the people that I was hurting at the moment. Those were the people, that's what I had to forgive myself for. Because, the people that hurt me, my mother never said, forgive me. My dad never said, forgive me. You know what I mean? Like those people didn't want forgiveness. So I had to me, forgiveness was, and I have a lot of conversations about this, because to me, like they have the Hawaiian hono, ono, I can't even say it. Can you say it?
Yes. Yes, it's ho'oponopono.
That's the one. And I know people are like, you have to wrap your head around that. And I'm like, yeah, no, but I have a different concept. And to me, forgiveness is just letting go of the anger and letting go. And so it doesn't have control over me.
Yes.
To me, there are some things like I forgive the whole picture as a whole. I forgive my parents. But there are actions that are unforgivable. I just don't think they do. And they've never asked to be forgiven. So, so to me, it was just, I'm going to let go of that control that anger has over me. It's not going to have that control anymore. And that was my version of forgiveness.
I think that's amazing. And this is, I think, the key, one of the main benefits of forgiveness is that it gives us control back in our lives. And it helps us open our heart to ourselves. And from those perspectives, it sounds like you were definitely doing forgiveness work. And I think for each of us, we have to figure out what defines forgiveness for us. You know, I have a slightly different version, similar but slightly different. And I enjoy, but part of my thing in the world is to explore spiritual principles and take them further, right? But so you let go of the anger and the rage, and what did that allow you to do? What became possible then?
It allowed me to open up the possibility to being just like that with everybody. Like it literally made me the most compassionate, not giving, and I don't want to say not giving, but it literally opened up to, wow, people are all good. People are all, like anything that happens and anything that comes at me, it's because they have their own problems. Like I stopped taking things personally. I stopped, I love the day that I finally decided, you know what other people think of me is none of my business. Because if someone's mad at me or if someone doesn't like something I did, that's their problem, not mine. I'm going to just do the best I can do and stop being so hard on myself and just know that I'm doing the best I can do. Am I going to fail? Yeah, I'm going to fail at stuff because we're human. But, I don't know. It just lightened me up.
And you have a joy. There's a joy there. I can, like the moment you're tapping into that compassion, that does sound like compassion, right? It's compassion, sort of like we think of it like putting ourselves in somebody else's shoes to understand why they do what they do, right? Then we have a better understanding of their behavior. And when you're talking about it, though, I love this because I think what you're really speaking to is like the spiritual component of all people, the humanity and the spiritual component, right? It's both. We all have both. Yeah.
Yes.
And they're not perfect. We're not perfect. Nobody is. And if we were, I like to say to myself that, we'd burn up like the burning bush. We just transform into another dimension because we wouldn't need the human's experience anymore. Right.
And how boring would life be?
For sure. Everything's great. Everything's perfect. Yeah.
But it's funny. And I started when I started when I was about 22. I remember hearing, again, something on the radio, and someone told me about, I don't know what the book was, but read this book, The Attitude of Gratitude, and just started talking about gratitude. And literally to this day, I'm 56 and I wake up in the morning. The first 5 seconds, thank you for, and I say 5 things. And I work with a lot of people and they're like, I don't have 5 things. I'm like, you better find 5 things. Like, are you talking right now? Yes. Well, then be thankful that you have a voice. Or, do you have a place to sleep? Yes. Be thankful for that, and that to me is a big part of the human, that whole, I just think if everybody did that, can you imagine how good the world would be?
Oh my goodness. Yes.
Because then when the big things come at you, someone can cut me off. And instead of being like, I'll literally be like, oh, thank goodness I don't have to be anywhere in such a hurry. It just makes your life so much smoother. It's just so much more peaceful because when you wake up thankful for what you have, even if things seem horrible, when the big things come, you can see the good in them. And that includes people.
That's right. Yeah.
Not just situations.
Everything. Yes. Mm-hmm. Especially people, because we love to hold on to our stories about people and identities and who somebody, who that person was in our lives or what they did to us and this, that, and the other. And I do think it's fine to say, that was enough of that and I don't need more of that experience. Like we don't have to keep engaging with something that doesn't feel good. But we're always at that choice. And I know you have something you want to talk about here around like the identity and the definition of things. So I think that one of the things that helps prevent people or keeps people from forgiving is they have a way of thinking about themselves as who they are in comparison to others. Right. And so as long as that person's the bad person or this, that, or the other, then I'm better or, in some way. Right. And so we get confused around who we are. And we're not looking to the deeper piece of who we really are, because it's never about behavior. Behavior is a natural expression of who we are.
Right.
Right. And so I think there's something around the way that when we make a choice to forgive somebody,
right,
we want to do it from the place of freeing ourselves.
Yes.
Because as long as we hold on to it, we are not who we really are.
No. And that brings up such a good point, because I talk about that all the time with just, again, the anger, the resentment, all of that stuff. It's like you're walking around with this backpack of trouble. And every time something comes up and you don't deal with it, what do? You throw it in the backpack because you can't see it. You can't do this. And that is a lot of the emotions, the feelings, the stuff that just eats away at you. And and so if you can pull that stuff out little by little, like I remember the first time they said, you really have to forgive your mother. I was like, no, that's not going to happen. Like, there's no way I'm ever going to forgive that. And that's when I was about like 19. She had just passed, and they didn't even tell me she died. Like, I found out her little box needed to be sent somewhere that was in the hospital. So I was just like, okay, well, dump it somewhere. I don't care. And they're like, no, you really need to work through that for your own peace of mind. And that is a very hard concept. So I started really trying to pull it out one piece at a time. I guess you could say that, one small piece at a time, and finding, I really don't know how to describe, but dealing with everything one itty bitty piece at a time until you were getting to bigger issues, and you were sitting with bigger issues, and you were figuring out who I was. Because I know we talked earlier, and I think we talked on the last conversation too, about the fact that I didn't know who I was. And I didn't know, when you were talking about the joys and how you suppress the happy memories, I can remember laughing and being told, we don't know. What are you laughing about? There's nothing that funny. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. I'm a kid. I should at least be able to have fun, laugh and have fun. And so there was a lot to unpack. And I'm still unpacking. We'll be unpacking all of that stuff for the rest of our lives. But the unconditional love and the forgiveness is two very, very big concepts, which I think I've grasped. I mean, I know I love unconditionally. You should see my pug. I have a dog. And, the forgiveness, like I said, those things don't control me anymore. The negative thoughts about someone that did horrible things, it was just a moment in time, and I think that was
Yes.
a lot of forgiveness was just putting each individual situation as a moment in time. And it was like, okay, what am I going to learn from this? I'm going to be curious about this. And I don't believe you have to go back and relive anything to be able to heal. I just don't. I think you have to go back and sit with it, right?
And feel it. Yes, I think that feeling it and like allowing ourselves to actually honor what we went through, but then continue to feel and grieve until we get to that place of, well, wait a second, what else is there now that I'm not needing to hold on to those feelings?
And giving it that space, because I'm a big component, and you have so much energy in your body. So much of it is negative, so much is positive. So the more positive energy you can pull in and negative energy you can push out, and that's those things in your backpack. Get rid of that. Like, okay,
Yes.
It happened. It was this. I'm over it. Like, not necessarily I'm over it, but it was one moment in time. I survived it. It's okay. Gone. Throw it away. Visualize whatever you have to do. Put it in a little ball and pew, throw it over your shoulder.
Exactly. In my practices, like some of the things that I have people do are karate chops, sword cuts, bury things in the backyard, stuff like that. Like it really helps to physicalize a release of some kind. Where I'd like to go with this next is kind of tying this into business here, because I know, some people who are listening today are like, well, this is like, where are we going with this? Like forgiveness. Yeah, yeah. I forgave my ex or I forgave this. But I also see in business how, well, mostly because I work with women, but how women are getting stuck. They're getting stuck in prosperity. They're getting stuck in opportunity. Like they just don't see where they could go. They get stuck with how they think they're supposed to be a business leader. And a lot of that is connected to not having forgiven something from the past. Do you have any insights that you'd like to share around that?
Yeah, I think a lot of us are stuck. And I think it's because I always go back to that inner child and people go, oh, yeah, the inner child is that joyous, happy, free spirit, divine creature you were born. But it's also the one that absorbed all the pain, absorbed all the hurt, absorbed all of this stuff. And when you go forward into the real world and you haven't dealt with all of that stuff, the forgiveness, especially for yourself, it's just people are walking around with this huge sense of just, I call them the not enough. And the not enoughs will follow you into absolutely everything you do. So, and it's self-sabotaging because let's say you have a money issue and you have a money block and, people go, you have a money block. Well, yeah, but where does that come from? Well, it comes from not feeling worthy enough to have more you don't think you deserve more. You don't think you should have it. So people will literally climb the corporate ladder, boom, 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 boom. And as soon as they get close to the top, bam, they're right back to the beginning. And people are like, well, what did they do? Well, they didn't truly believe that they deserved it. And a lot, it's forgiving. It all kind of ties together. So I don't know, you know what I mean?
No, that's a great example. The corporate ladder. I see the same thing in terms of people having big windfalls and then losing everything, or they go out and they spend it on, giant marketing teams or whatever they're going to do, and then they're right back where they were. And so we've got to change the stuff underneath. And forgiveness is just one of those timeless, forgiveness and gratitude. They are both timeless truths or processes to get to truth and to be free. And for me, that's really what I'm about. I'm about inner freedom so we can have outer freedom. And a lot of us want to start from the outside in. And so we have some and then we don't. And then we have it and we don't. We have it and don't. It takes a lot of energy. We're constantly push pull, right? And and then we leave a bunch of messes behind us. But if we can do the journey that you went on, this forgiveness, and I've done this as well, the forgiveness piece of truly forgiving, then and continuing to forgive others and ourselves, then we do, I believe, continue up that upward spiral, to greater experiences and attracting amazing people into our lives and etc. And the money sticks around.
Exactly. Well, because forgiveness in general is just positive energy. It's just saying, I love you for no matter what,
But feeling that, right? Like you say it and you mean it. But I know there are lots of people out there giving, oh, I forgive them. Yep. No. And I could tell immediately the moment somebody starts talking about somebody, did they really forgive? Because there's a bristle, there's a sticky, there's some resentment hidden in there in those words, or it's a denial, right? I think that's where a lot of people get stuck. They get in denial. I've forgiven them. I'm not going to think about them, but that's not forgiveness, right?
No, our brain is very good at denying. Our brain is very, very good at turning the other cheek and being like, nope, not dealing with that. But yeah, and it's, it's funny because for some people, like I was dealing with a woman about 2 weeks ago, and she had an issue with her brother, and she said, I'm over that. I've dealt that. I've forgiven him. And so I walked her through a couple of questions, and I said, now, I know where she normally feels her stress. And so I walked her through a couple of questions. And when we got to that one question, I said, how did that feel? And she said, really tense in my stomach. And I said, you haven't forgiven him. You're saying the word. But sometimes if you don't know, ask yourself some questions. It's like people that say, I'm healed. I feel I'm living my authentic self and I can be free to be me, emotionally free. And then I'm like, great, and I always go back and I wish I knew it's a psychologist that said it. And they do this little test and they say, picture your favorite ice cream and how does that make you feel? Makes you feel warm and fuzzy and yummy and everything else. Now say, I deserve all good things. And watch the people like neck go up, shoulder go out.
Well, maybe I believe that. Yeah,
Yeah, I can't quite say that without a little clenching somewhere. And I'm like, yeah, you don't believe it. So be curious. I mean, it's like, sometimes I just say, if you just act curious and ask yourself a couple questions, you'll get the answer. You'll feel the answer in your body. And then you will know if you need more work on that or you need, and there's so many different ways of working on things, whether it's journaling, writing it out, writing letters to yourself, writing letters back. That was a big one for me. I would journal to my my inner child, my younger self. And then I would be like, huh. And then I would write back from my inner child and it would give me like stuff I never thought about.
Yes.
But just being curious because we're in denial. So if we're in denial, a lot of, then we think we're fine. If you never explore, you never know there's something better.
Well, and here's the thing. We can know where we're off if we really look at the life we want and the life we're living.
Exactly.
Right. And if we're painting it all Pollyanna, then there's something we're not dealing with. And if we're like, well, I guess it's only meant to be. I love that one. This is only meant to be in my life. Like the great rationalizing statement of everything, right? No, that's not how everything works.
I remember I was doing a vision board with someone one time and she had this picture of this boat and it was like a 25, 30-foot boat or whatever. And she went to put it on her vision board and she said, yeah, I was going to put that on my vision board, but I know I'll never have one of those. I'm like, because you just said that. Like, of course you won't, because you literally just put it into the universe that you will never have that boat, which means every time you get close to having that boat, you're going to do something that helps you not get that boat because you don't believe you deserve that boat. So it's like, even that's a small example, but doing a vision board, put everything on that freaking thing.
Yes.
People need to dream and they need to dream outside of their box, outside of the world they're in now, because they wouldn't be listening to podcasts like this if they were everywhere they wanted to be.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's a reason that you're here today listening. And so take a piece of this to heart and put something new or just slightly different twist on it and keep going with it. Tammy, this is awesome. I have a feeling we could keep going for hours, but I want to make sure that everybody knows how to get in touch with you. So please regale them with your information.
Sure. Probably the easiest way is just to go to my website. It's my name, tammyvincent.com. You can get a class there, a course there. You can get a link to my podcast. You can book a coffee chat. I would love to do that. If there's any courses or anything that you're interested in, just use the coupon podcast. I do that anytime I guest or do a podcast, and it gives you like 90% off everything. So,
oh, that's cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. And you have a free gift, and it skipped my brain what it is right now.
It can be, let's see, I'll give my course. That's a really fun 8-week self-guided course. Yeah.
That's huge. Oh my gosh. Look at that. Look at the generosity right here on this podcast. Okay. So
we'll put the link, but just use the coupon code HEAL for free, FOR, HEAL for free. And then the course will be free.
That's amazing, Tammy. Thank you for your generosity. And thank you for all the brilliant work that you're doing out there with all kinds of folks, and especially with the younger folks that you're working with and helping them to understand their situation and helping them to survive, not more than survive it, but to learn how to thrive in the aftermath. So thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to say before we go?
No, I just want to let you all know that if you're out there listening, you are so worth every single second that you put into being happier. So worth it.
Hear, hear. All right. Thank you so much for being a joyous guest today on Say Yes to Your Soul. And I wish everyone a beautiful week. Light and love in your heart for yourself first, and letting it flow out to others. All right. Bye-bye for now.
All right. If you're hearing this message, you have listened to our newest Say Yes to Your Soul episode all the way to the end. And for that, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I invite you to stay updated with me, and the best way to do that is to sign up for my free gift, 3 Steps for How to Reignite Your Soul Fire. And you can get that at tessafreegift.com, tessafreegift.com, or just go to the podcast website, sayyesToYourSoulPodcast.com, and that's where we have all the episodes and more. I wish you an amazing day.